You told me this was going to be a simple extraction. They were waiting for me. What was waiting for me was barely human. It tore the back off my car.
Grow a spine, Solo.
Hello, everybody. This is the Next Reel's Film Board. Each month, a gang of thugs gathers to take on one film currently in theaters and spoil it rotten. This month, we're taking on the origin story of your favorite weird relative, The Man from U.N.C.L.E, from director Guy Ritchie. I'm Pete Wright, making up the gang this month. We have the one knowing that there's just one special word to make all the pain stop. If only he could remember what it was. Steve Sarmento.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
And the man looking to find himself in a bottle of bourbon and a damned fine close-cut suit, Andy Nelson.
Call me cowboy.
And eventually, he's not going to say anything right now because he's trying to maintain his cover. He's known in the trades only by his code name, The Mouth. We know him as Mike Evans. Shh. And finally, our very own double agent, double the fun, Tommy Two-Faced Handsome.
Hello, friends. Glad to be here.
Before we get into the film, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com/filmboard. Subscribe for free on iTunes or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And be sure to join us over at Instagram.com/thenextreel and play the Instagram hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge with our favorite Scott, Stephen Smart. Contests start each Friday. Okay, so The Man from U.N.C.L.E. We suit up here for our latest origin story reboot, this time of the popular 1960s television show of the very same name, starring Robert Vaughn and David McCallum. It's an interesting show. It was a touch more than a spiritual nod to James Bond. Ian Fleming was actually involved in the development of the original show, but it really proved to have much more of a cultural engine of its own. U.N.C.L.E. paraphernalia is on display at the Reagan Presidential Library exhibit on spies and counter-spies. I don't know if that says more about U.N.C.L.E. than it does about Reagan. Ritchie's U.N.C.L.E. pairs Henry Cavill as Napoleon Solo with Armie Hammer as Ilya Kuryakin, joined by Alicia Vikander, Elizabeth Debicki, and Hugh Grant supporting. Around the horn, how'd we like it, Steve?
Well, it was fun-ish. There are things that I enjoyed. There were things that I have problems with. So, it's sort of one of these middling ones, and I may sway back and forth. I don't regret my time there, but then I have to ask myself, who was this film really for? What did it accomplish? Was it really necessary?
Oh, actually, that's a really good question, and I had written that question just for you, so I look forward to you answering it shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, stand by. Tommy.
I had very low expectations for the film. I don't know anything about The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I have no idea still what U.N.C.L.E. stands for, even though they told us in the ending credits. But that being said, and Guy Ritchie is super hit or miss for me. But that being said, going in, I had a lot of fun. I thought it was super breezy and super fun. I'm already forgetting it minute by minute after leaving the theater. But I know while in the theater, I laughed more than I thought I would, and I was surprised more than I thought I would, and I really liked it.
Oh.
I had a good time.
You're a puzzle to me, Tommy. As long as I've known you, I walked out of the theater saying, Tommy's going to hate me again. Just for being a part of this show.
It might just be because this one doesn't have any ants in it. That's enough to get a 5-star review for me because I'm still waking up in a cold sweat.
And no fake things fighting fake things or
Exactly.
lying fake things. Yeah.
Andy, where'd you come out?
I'm kind of like Tommy. I mean, I do have my share of issues with it, but all in all, I had a lot of fun with the film. It was one of those that just was right in my alley, just easy to let go and just enjoy myself with. And I had a great time.
I'm with you guys. I was watching it from also kind of that cultural perspective. Where does this film stand? And I think, more than many others right now, these reboots, here's an interesting one that I think is really well timed given our sort of global political stance right now. And so I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed the action of it. I was surprised by the sort of weight put on each of the cast members and the story, and so I had a really good time. I'm with you guys. Guy Ritchie is a bit hit or miss for me, but for this one, it's not out of the park, but maybe a double.
Yeah, well, and I think we talked last month. We were talking about our issues with Ant-Man and origin stories, and as I walked out of the theater, that was one of the topics I wanted to touch on. With this one was, does this work really well as an origin story? Because it appears that they're setting this up for a possible sequel. It plays that origin. Let's bring the team together. All that. Did it really succeed in doing that?
I think that's a really good question, because for me, right before the very end of the final scene of the three of them standing on the balcony, right before the closing credits, I could have gone either way. Honestly, I could have felt really good about this being the film. They could have ended it there, and I would have been satisfied. At the same time, as soon as they said, hey, we're going off to another mission, Hugh Grant comes out and says, by the way, you're on my team. And then the closing credits sort of explain what the next movie is going to be about in terms of bringing these people together. I found myself equally satisfied. That's pretty rare. It usually is, that blatant of a setup is kind of, I don't know, cheap.
Especially right now, with my personal exhaustion with franchises and with superheroes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess I'm a big fan of closed movies. That's why I hope they don't make another Kingsman, the Secret Service, because I just thought it was so much fun. But yeah, I'd be fine with that, I guess.
That's an easy one. Kingsman's an easy one to pretend that they don't. Even if they do, you can pretend they do, because it closes at the end. So you could really ignore a sequel and it would feel good. You can't do that with this one because it's got that blatant, end. Mike, how did it sit for you as an origin story? It's a little bit of an awkward origin story.
A little bit odd.
Ah! Where did he come from?
But I enjoyed it. I thought it was. I thought there's definitely potential to do to explore the space, as it were.
Were you familiar? And I know you are not the oldest. Steve has the title of being, I think, the oldest of us. And yet still none of us are contemporary of the original show. Anybody have any experience with the original show?
I did not.
None.
No. None.
All right. So really, this is an origin story for us.
Yeah, I had nothing about it.
It would be remiss of us, I think, not to talk about its direct competition right now this season. Obviously it is meant to satisfy the same sort of needs, story needs, emotional needs for us as I would guess Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I have not seen it, but it's blowing the doors off the place. I know you guys have caught it. How does it compare? I mean, did it live up to expectations after with Rogue Nation under your belt?
I think it is an interesting comparison, the two of them. Mission Impossible, it does have, I suppose, the benefit of a modern sort of story. So you get all the cool gadgetry and tricks that they're doing now, and Tom Cruise doing his amazing stunt work. This one, I actually felt they did a really effective job of doing stunt work set in the Cold War era. I actually really enjoyed the car chase at the beginning. I enjoyed the boat chase. I mean, the way that they did it, and I think the way the characters reacted within them, I think actually made them more effective. The least effective one I felt was actually the chase of the vehicles as they're trying to stop the Jeep getting away. And maybe it's because everybody was in their own separate vehicle and you didn't have as much of that kind of the jovial nature of the camaraderie, or just the playfulness of it.
Well, in that part of the film, the tone changed. It sort of wasn't lighthearted and comical anymore. It was the expressions on their faces, the way that they were acting, sort of matched the seriousness of what was going on.
Right, they had to put their grown-up pants on.
That part, the big chase of vehicles was also, and I don't mean to skip ahead in our conversation, but that was also the most Guy Ritchie-ness of the film. I actually thought he showed, for him, pretty amazing restraint for most of the film. And then he was like, cars and motorcycles, let's go nuts. And just went for it and got all of his stuff out.
You don't feel like he went a little bit overboard in the initial car chase? I mean, that felt very Guy Ritchie. It felt like a cross between Guy Ritchie and Speed Racer.
But not the filmmaking for me. The idea and the imagination for me felt like Speed Racer and stuff, but the filmmaking with that whooshy, crazy, zoom in, zoom out, film is my clay, I can do whatever I want, and I lose interest and, focus in a second. it felt like it was kind of elegantly filmed at times, while the basic idea was insane.
Insane, but it ends up, I think, having a wonderful punchline at the end of that opening sequence, right? I mean, it's in terms of the punchline to the action, where the whole thing is absolutely nuts, and they end up wedged, 10 feet off the ground next to this window, and he says, "Now we turn left into the apartment," which
Right.
I thought was beautiful. Had a good chuckle. I was, sitting in a fairly full audience, and everybody really liked that bit. Like, it felt like a good moment. But, apart from the driving, this film felt really, it was very physical. It was very thuggish, and that I think is another Guy Ritchie thing. It didn't rely too much on the sort of Mission Impossible-ness of the gadgets and the tricks. This was very much, we're trying to be spies. There's nothing secret. When his watch gets stolen, you really get to be sad because it was his, dad's watch, not because he lost the laser cutter. Although I guess, to be fair, he had a laser cutter.
Well, and that's, for me, the technology.
Damn it.
The technology in this one was more for punchlines, for jokes, because
Yes.
the couple that I think of is, here Solo's cutting through the fence, and he's like, "Oh, they're laser hardened," and then Ilya pulls out his, he's like, "Yeah, laser cut through the fence," and then we get the tracking device, which is like the size of like a, I don't know, some type of huge gadget she's got like clipped under her like mini skirt. It's like, yeah, these are ridiculously sized technology because it's 1960, whatever, and so it's different from what they do in Mission Impossible or even the upcoming James Bond films, where the setting it in that era, we can poke fun at the technology or the bugs that the two guys use to plant on each other. They're these huge devices. I mean, Solo finds one because it's so big it's interfering with like the alarm on his wind up clock in the apartment. It's this huge like transistor looking thing wedged in there. So it has that lightness to it, which I think it benefits from. I don't think this film, if they had tried to reboot it in a contemporary setting, would have worked at all, because I think that field is just too full with James Bond and Mission Impossible, Jason Bourne. There's so much going on. So they set it there, which I think added a nice visual texture to the film. Some just gorgeous, costumes and sets, and just, had a very nice look about it. But if I set that aside, I always come back to, what did it do? Yes, it had some laughs. I was entertained, but overall, did it do? Is that all it was supposed to do? Because I don't know that that's enough to launch a franchise. For me, is it enough for an origin story? I think, I'm satisfied if this doesn't go anywhere. I still don't know if I'm invested enough in this team to say, I can't wait to see what they do next, because there were some interesting dynamics, but it just didn't elevate itself enough for me to say, yeah, I'm so excited about this universe and this scenario that they've set up with these characters and their dynamics. There were too many problems I had with it going on. And I don't know if it's script or choices Guy Ritchie made in how visually he was telling things, but I couldn't get myself totally invested into having all that fun and letting loose with it.
I may have a hypothesis, and for me, because I think you're right, there is this question of investment, and I wonder if it's that I didn't get a sense that they were pitching these three as a team for a really long time in the movie.
Yeah.
Right? It took a long time to get that, oh, okay, I can kind of see how these are working together. It's not just protecting her. It's not just these guys are having a fun bit about how ridiculously much they know about women's fashion and brands. Like there were some great moments in it, but sure. I didn't get that they were a team until the end. And I wonder if that has any impact on investment.
I'm just curious if that allows us, though, to just really kind of focus on the character more and invest more in the characters themselves and not necessarily worry about if it is going to be a franchise or not. And let us enjoy that bit at the end. Go, oh, cool! There's going to be another one, sort of thing. Whereas, if you feel like, oh, it's the team, and yeah, this is going to be the setup for a whole, the next big universe of some other franchise, sort of thing. I like that it was kind of set up this way, where you didn't necessarily know that it was going to be a team film. I think that it made me not know really where it was going to go. Like I didn't know that she was going to turn out to be an agent herself. I mean, I knew there was something going on with her, but that wasn't what I was expecting. And so it ended up pushing it into a different direction that I did like quite a bit. And I actually think that it worked in favor of the film.
I agree with you, actually, Andy. I think it did. And I think it's only in hindsight that I feel like that question comes up in terms of the value of them as a team and our investment in it. But I really enjoyed it. And I thought each of the characters actually did a good job. And to that point, I went into this film thinking this was a Henry Cavill vehicle. And that this was going to be much more centered around him. I found that they did a really good job, and it was sort of distracting at first, I think, for the first kind of 30 minutes, just how much time they spent with Armie Hammer, that he wasn't just kind of an antagonist, but was actually part of the team. As somebody who doesn't have a great memory of the show, I thought it was really elegant and interesting the way they in fact did split the trio, the stories of the trio, really fairly. This wasn't just centered around, Superman.
It was interesting that you say that, because I don't know if Henry Cavill can have vehicles yet. Like, I don't know if, do people know him enough? Like I think Tom Cruise can. I think that's what kind of helped Mission Impossible movie franchises when they first came out, was he was a bankable star. And he did very, very, very well in them, right? And he sort of drove them. It's would you if this had been George Clooney, then you'd be like, well, George Clooney. Well, this is like,
it would definitely
right,
be.
This is Henry Cavill. I mean, I won't say I know Armie Hammer. I won't say I know, except for Hugh Grant, right? He's the only name I could say that I could point to in the movie, but. Is it really even a Henry Cavill vehicle yet? I mean, is he vehicleable?
Well, he is Superman, right?
Yeah, but you don't go seeing. I mean, I don't think people went to see Superman because it's like, ooh, it's Henry Cavill's next film. I think they went because it was Superman.
That's really not the question.
Henry Cavill's Superman. No, you're right.
But really, the question isn't so much did they go see Superman because of Henry Cavill? It's, are they going to see the next Superman because of Henry Cavill?
And no.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, I checked. Nope. I got America on the phone. No.
So you don't think people know him even after Man of Steel? You don't think people know him as the actor who plays Superman well enough at this point, or that he's not bankable enough?
My guess would be that if I was to ask 8 of my friends, 7 of them wouldn't know the name Henry Cavill. But maybe that's just me.
Okay, quick poll. Did you like him better as Napoleon Solo or as Superman?
I didn't see Superman. I'm not having a real conversation. I'm just saying things.
I will say that he did, in my opinion, he did a better acting job in this movie, in Man of Uncle, than in Superman. So from the moment I knew he was in the movie till the end of the film, watching it, I thought he did a fantastic job playing that role.
I thought he was fun. When he first started talking like his super snotty thing, I was wondering like, oh no. Like, he's made a horrible choice, until that turned out to be the boon for so much humor of his completely unflappable stuff. And then I thought he was really funny.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he was great in this. I mean, I didn't like Man of Steel at all, so it's hard for me to judge just him. I mean, I think he did an okay job as Superman in that film, if I just focus on him and not the film itself. But this, I felt like he really captured the essence of this character of Napoleon Solo.
But like Robert Vaughn played him in the TV show, so I don't have any source material to sort of know what his character was. I mean, they took all the names of the characters directly from the show, so I don't know if he played a good Napoleon Solo, but I know he played a good character in the movie, and I thought he after he realized that, so the movie's a little campy, but his character is his character, and you can see it, and it's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, Robert Vaughn didn't need his biggest suit.
Now, the thing that I did find myself wondering is, because I don't think his performance in Man of Steel was that memorable for him. So as I was watching this, I'm listening to him talk, and I'm asking myself, does he have that? Is there an accent? And I think it's called like the Mid-Atlantic or transcontinental,
transatlantic
accent that he had, and I was like, is that an accent he's done for this, which seems to fit really well, or is that how he speaks. I don't know, because I don't know him as an actor that well other than Superman, and I didn't catch anything there. So I thought, this is interesting, because I was really enjoying his performance, but I just caught myself thinking, is it sort of like Tom Cruise, where Tom Cruise plays Tom Cruise in all these movies? Is Henry Cavill playing himself, or is it he's really created this persona of Napoleon Solo? And I couldn't tell the difference, because I think he isn't such a known entity to make that distinction.
Well, he is British.
Yeah, isn't everyone is faking accents except for Hugh Grant in this movie, right?
Pretty much.
I think so.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Hugh Grant might be the only
It's
one.
a crazy accent off.
Yeah,
It's almost kind of like, why not hire someone from that country? I thought their accents were fine. I'm not throwing shade, but it was just weird that everyone is playing dress up with their voices.
I think it's actually they are, and I think Alicia Vikander, she's Swedish. Go Sweden. And she I think so. She was playing German. Elizabeth Debicki
French.
Was born in Paris to a Polish father with an Australian mother of Irish descent.
Is that
and
Ex
they were
Machina
dancers.
girl?
No. Alicia Vikander was Ex Machina.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Elizabeth Debicki was the
Victoria.
Baddie.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, so moving on from Henry Cavill, what about Armie Hammer?
Loved him. I've been waiting for Armie Hammer to. Oh, it sounds like I might be alone. I'm going out on this branch. Let's go, foster dog. We're going on this branch alone. I thought he was super fun. I thought that they maybe drilled in the idea that he has rage issues a little bit too hardcore. I had just watched, just for fun, Social Network. Rewatch Social Network again. I think he's really magnetic, and I think he's really interesting, and I liked him.
That's what I was going to say. The only thing terrible about Man from U.N.C.L.E, Armie Hammer's the performance, is that there weren't two of him.
Right.
I like him a lot, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to say this, and this may be my on my guilty pleasure list. I even liked him in Lone Ranger.
Oh.
I said it.
I did too.
Thank you, Tommy.
I think he's really neat, and I don't think Lone Ranger is anywhere near as bad as people give it bad credit for. So I'm also going on the record for that.
Tommy, I feel good about this.
Oh, good.
Still
also,
have no idea who you are.
Also, Pete is so handsome.
I thought he was great in this. I thought he was great. I had no problem with him. I haven't seen Lone Ranger, so I can't say. But I mean, I have enjoyed pretty much all of his performances, even in movies. I mean, I'd say Mirror Mirror is the one that's really the painful one to watch. That film is pretty bad. But I mean, even he wasn't. He was fine in it. It's just a bad film. But
I don't even know what that is, to be honest.
It was one of the two competing Snow White movies that came out a few years ago.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like conflict, so I decided not to see either.
I had kids, so I saw both.
Got it.
Yep. But I thought he was great. I did like the struggles that he had as a character with his rage, with his attraction to Vikander's character, and just dealing with somebody from the West. I enjoyed all of those elements going on in this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his character is the one that really has a transformation through this film. You know, Napoleon Solo is pretty much the same. So that was what was surprising to me in this, is from the setup, you think, okay, here's this antagonist character, and then it turns into the buddy cop movie where there's the two guys that don't get along and they've got to go on a mission. We've seen this before. But by the end, I felt like, there had been some change in his character, and there was some development. There was an arc there that was unexpected, and I think his performance was able to carry that well. So I was impressed. I feel that if there's a film that's gonna help launch his career after a few stumbles like Lone Ranger, this may be the film that gets him back on track, and we can see more things from him in the future. To see Armie Hammer as that branded name where people are like, oh, it's an Armie Hammer film. Maybe I'll go see that.
Alicia Vikander. Oh, she's adorable.
Is that Ex Machina?
Yes.
Machina? Okay, good. Oh, she's adorable.
She's adorable. I want two of her and to make her bookends.
That's not creepy at all.
That's just a little creepy.
That's not weird.
Was that no? That was bad. I don't know.
No.
Sometimes I forget where the line is.
Creepy.
I thought she was. I thought she was really terrific. I have to say, she was adorable.
She was great, and she had a toughness about her that worked really well paired with these two guys. that played off of them well, and I think she held her own against them. And when the twist comes later in the film that there's something she's doing, and we didn't know what it was. I enjoyed all of that. She had carried that element of surprise well in the film.
There's a structural thing I want your thoughts on, and this is more about production than her specifically, but she's sort of a vessel of it. There is a point toward the end where I began to notice. It was when she was at the final meet and Armie Hammer was in the bushes watching her, and she started talking. And the question was, how do you know so much? And she says, simple. And then it jumps to silent use of montage, right? And then immediately comes back to the unveiling of how she knew. And it was at that point I started to notice they did that a lot in this movie, right? A lot. And sometimes it was paced really well, where they would unveil something that you saw well earlier in the film, and they would sort of release the secret, which was really great. But sometimes it was like this scene with Alicia, where they released the secret immediately after they told you it was a secret. And I found that gave me a little bit of secret fatigue. Am I alone?
No, you're not alone.
Nope.
Nope.
Huge problem.
I thought it was horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go.
Well,
Mike.
I thought it was completely wasted. Like, so the end scene on the carrier, they did it, and they did it a couple times in the hotel, and I felt it was like it's a mechanism that was wasted. It was like wasted energy, because I thought they could. And to be honest with you, I don't remember any cases where they did it, where they planted the thing, and then did the rewind later on in the movie, which I thought would have worked well, right? I felt doing it 45 seconds after you do the thing doesn't really achieve any other effect than we got to see the scene twice.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was feeling, Steve.
Well, there was one that happened earlier on where there's a scene where the guys are out on their mission or whatever, or something like that, or maybe it's a little after that. She gets a call, or she makes a call, and she says, connect me to room 304, and she says, okay, the meeting's been set. And I'm like, okay, that's not Napoleon's room. Who's she talking to? This is interesting. And we don't find out for quite a while. And so that, to me, that reveal, I didn't really need, because I think other things we could piece that together as an audience. So that was one where I felt like, you left me hanging there. Okay, you probably didn't need to tell me that, but some people may have been wondering if that tied into this other reveal. But the other ones, when she's at the table and the one on the aircraft carrier, I'm like, okay, you made this choice, but you haven't been pegged down to like one point of view where you needed to break to give us this information because your narrative restrictions didn't allow us to have it. It was, you needed to keep the audience out of the loop to build suspense, and it's like artificially creating suspense just to create suspense, and
it's kind of like cheating.
Yeah, exactly. I felt those were cheats, where it's not like a big mystery where it's like, aha, I'll tell you how I know everything and lay out all these clues that we've seen. It's just like, we need to build some suspense, and then a minute or two later we're going to tell you this information because we needed to withhold it to you to keep you on edge. And to me it's just faulty storytelling. Like, you couldn't find a better way to structure that, because if that had been revealed, what did that do to the story that deflated it, that you felt like you needed to create this suspense?
Slightly interestingly, it's the opposite. I think I know where he got the idea, or got at least the taste in his mouth for it. It's the opposite of what he does in Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
The Sherlock Holmes movies, when he predicts the fight.
Yes.
Goes through it slowly and then goes back and does it really fast.
Yeah.
So I love directors that play with linearity. Oops. Yeah, linearity and stuff like this, like that. And when it worked in this movie, I'm totally agreeing with you guys. When it worked, it worked. The aircraft carrier was like laughable.
It was enormous.
We were just there.
Yeah. Not only were we just there, but there was enough good work in camera. Like, when the missile went off, we saw the flare go across his face on the phone. Like, we knew what happened already.
Yeah, we were way ahead of him.
We were so far ahead of him that they didn't use it as a tool to actually unveil something useful more than they used it as a tool to unveil something cool. And And that was just really, really frustrating. And I think does a disservice to these guys who are giving great performances that really demonstrate what was actually going on.
I will say that your example of Sherlock Holmes, that's where I was remembering it from. I couldn't put my finger on it. And because that was a good, I thought it wasn't just the slow-mo map out of the fights, but they also had major components where they went back to stuff that went in like the first half of the movie, and they wrapped it all up in the end, and they would like sort of flash back to different parts where they had left little Easter eggs, and then and they would like collect it all together. That I thought that was like planting it far enough away from the reveal that it was well worth it. It was you're like, oh yeah, I missed that. Where you're not getting any benefit out of it doing it 45 seconds after.
A cool in the modern cinema, a cool way that I think has used that really well was the first Ocean's 11 by Soderbergh.
Absolutely,
that he puts so many totem poles that you don't notice of like, okay, the SWAT team is coming up. Why do they have a thing hanging in their side view mirror? Like but you remember it all sort of. Subliminally, and then it all comes back.
Well, and it makes it that much more rewarding to watch again. You actually feel like you have something to piece together. And even in the good use of the tool in U.N.C.L.E, there is no value in rewatching any of these things. Right? There's nothing. It's a fun movie to watch, but in terms of a trope, that bit failed.
Yeah.
One bit, however, that I think worked really well is the use of montage in really interesting ways. I think, and the one that really comes to mind,
like the split screen stuff. Or?
The split screen stuff. It's the split screen stuff, but it's when they use the split screen stuff in the film, right? That was the big insertion, right? That was the incursion into the big nuclear thing. And they made the biggest, most explosive, most spy-heavy kind of pinnacle of the film a montage of split-screen 60s insanity, and I loved it. I loved it.
That's so cool that you brought that up.
Oh my God, it was so great. And you know why? It's both beautiful and a little bit disappointing, because the payoff I thought was going to be, hey, okay, so clearly he wants me to move through all the Flash stuff so that there will be a bigger payoff. And I think what you guys have already pointed out, for me at least, also the bigger payoff was this rather middling car chase up the mountain, which I think the coolest part was him driving across the water, which I thought was fun. I found myself smiling big at that. What did you think of that? Am I alone there? I thought that was super fun.
It was a great nod to, for me, it was like straight out of the Thomas Crown Affair, the original 68 McQueen version with Faye Dunaway.
Oh, yeah.
That's the whole setup. Like at the beginning of that film, when the bank robbery, it's all like this cool split screen and just the kind of this funky stuff. I mean, it's a great design to do an action scene like that. And I love that he kind of pulled that element from the 60s to throw that in there. I thought it worked really well.
Well, see, I think it worked other times in the film when he used it, when they're breaking into the satellite whatever factory manufacturing place, when Solo and Ilya are going in there, it's used there. It's used like one other point, I think, when we first get to the island, but when there's the big military assault, it was too much. I thought I liked the idea of we're going to condense this huge like assault sequence. I thought that was interesting, but the cutting, it was like chaos cinema, 60s style. It was so many different sections of this film with, on the screen broken up into 6 to 8 different parts, and each section is like only like 2 seconds long. So there's nothing I can focus on. And maybe that's the intent, to just like, we're assaulting this place. And okay, now we're done in 30 seconds. But it just was too much to look at. I didn't have any sense of where we were other than here's guys in black shooting other guys and it's night vision or this and that. And then we're through it. And I thought, what you're telling me is you're condensing this part of the story because, yay, we're going to get to something better, I hope. But now I'm thinking, if you hadn't showed us all those other scenes like 3 times through, these flashback things to show us the secret reveals, maybe we could have spent a little bit more time on the assault, getting some suspense.
I agree with you on a bit on that point. And I think more philosophically, sort of visually, I love the idea of compressing time using the montage. I think it works much better as a visual trope than the repetition bit that they do. I agree. There were a lot of split screens. Like it was an enormity of split screen, an insanity of split screen. And I'm just glad they didn't put shaky cam in there too.
If Guy Ritchie's going to do split screen, he's going to do 6. Like he's going to be like, yeah, he's like a dog with a bone. He's insane.
I will say this: there was a lot of '60s era visual, not just the dress and the cars, but like the television, a lot of visual things that they do, a lot of tricks that they did in television shows back in the '60s. I think they didn't bring too many of them in. So even if the split screen may have been a little bit overdone, I don't think they used it too much. I don't think they were getting wacky. There were no freeze, stop, everyone do dancing, on the stage, and then back to the action type stuff that they could have done. I think they kept it pretty tame.
Wait.
Yeah, I think the
Did they only do that in? Wait a minute. Did they only do that in the Michael Myers film?
No,
Mike
they
Myers?
used to do that for real.
What are those called? Austin Powers.
They used to do that for real.
They didn't really do those, did they?
Yes, you should watch some old Batman TV shows.
They would just have a
They
dance
would do that
break?
in. I've watched old Batman, but I don't remember the dancing. That's like a Gidget, like beach blanket bingo, and
those were things that in that time period were hip, and different TV shows tried them in different levels of intensity.
Well, you definitely just locked the old man of the episode.
Well, no. But I will say this though: I thought they brought. I didn't think they brought too much of that stuff in, and so I didn't have an issue with the split screen. I didn't think it was too much, but I will say that it wasn't like dominating the whole movie.
Okay, so not too much of the 60s, and yet I do want to point out, in terms of the production design, I adored this film. I felt so into the 60s. Like, it was beautiful.
Yeah, and everybody looked the part, especially the women and their outfits. Vikander and Debicki both just looked so good in their 60s outfits. It's just a treat to watch and just feel the era.
And I love who said it. I think it was Steve, but it might have been Andy, and I apologize. But the only reason that this film can exist and have its sort of own marker is in the time period it's in, versus getting lost in the world of Bourne and James Bond and Kingsman and all that kind of stuff of like, it just has such a strong stylish sense that it was just really stood out.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's another reason this film just, I think, landed at just the right time. And I hope it finds enough of an audience that agrees with that, because I think it's just really fun in that regard. Particularly for those of us who were, kind of born just after the 60s, the heat of the 60s, certainly didn't grow up in the 60s. I think it's
so
great.
Who do you think the audience is for this film? Because I can tell you, I saw a early afternoon show, and it was an interesting mix of people, but the vast majority of those in attendance were, I'd say, over 60. So I'd say fans of the TV show. There were some younger kids there, but I feel like a lot of the audience I saw it with were fans of the show, remembered the show, or just people trying to get out of this horrible heat wave we're having in Phoenix. But it seemed like, I think the younger crowds were going to Straight Outta Compton this weekend, and this was the counter programming for an older audience.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, I was kind of doing a visual, highly rigorous visual survey of my audience too, and it was a big mix. I mean, there were a number of people who looked kind of right in my age. I sat down kind of near the back at the very top. I was the only person in my row, and 2 minutes after the film starts, 3 look about 14-year-olds boys walk in and sit down right next to me. I've never seen these people at all. They said it was totally broke, theater. Conduct totally broke theater conduct, and yet they sat next to me, didn't acknowledge I was there, and then proceeded to tell each other about how funny the film was as it was going on throughout the entire length of it. And so
that
I know
wearing
from
a plant
them
suit, that's hysterical.
It was. They really got a kick out of it, and they had a blast. And I'd say they were in that sort of 14, 15-year-old range. So I thought it really appealed. We didn't laugh at the same things generally, and so I thought that was really interesting. I think a sign of broad appeal, at least for my experience.
But I don't know if it does have an audience. It's like a nostalgia audience. I mean, this isn't like people like watching Doctor Who. that got canceled in the late '80s or whatever, and they were hoping it would come back. And they have people who are actively watching the TV show. I mean, if there were, this is like the Avengers. There's a certain segment of this type of stuff in the '60s that what were we talking about? That's like 50 years ago. So I don't think. If it's anything, I don't think that the filmmakers who are making this type of stuff are banking on the crowds of old Man from U.N.C.L.E. watchers coming out to see the movie.
Because none of my when I was saying that I was seeing Man from U.N.C.L.E. today to a lot of my friends that I've seen over the weekend, a lot of them didn't even know that the film was coming out, and they don't even know what Man from U.N.C.L.E. is. We're a little bit older, so that's fine. But the basic idea is, I think it's a mix between the studios desperately needing for a name, like that name recognition thing that they're holding on to, so they make films like Battleship and stuff, which have nothing to do with anything that anyone cares about. But then also put in with a filmmaker that is like, okay, but I'll make it my own. Like, I'll take a little bit of the tropes and stuff like this, but then if that's what it takes to make a franchise, if that's what it takes to get a studio to make money, to give me money to make a film, then I'll do it. But I won't really care about Man from U.N.C.L.E. Did that make any sense?
I'm getting around that. I'm coming around the corner on you.
Yeah. It was a lot of words. Do you want me to try it again? Cut that out.
Okay.
Look, guys, first there were dinosaurs. No, I don't know. I just feel like that I'm so fed up with Hollywood name recognition, with the studios so perseverating on that all the time, that's what's needed. And it continually fails unless the film works. And so I just wonder if people like Guy Ritchie can make good movies based on a dumb franchise that no one cares about anymore. If that's what it takes, then maybe, unfortunately, that's the way to keep making good movies in Hollywood.
I think that it's a very interesting way to try to make something. I don't know if it's going to work for them. And I think a big part of that is it doesn't have as much of the name draw. And going back to what we were saying earlier,
not at all.
I really think that in order for something like this to kick into a really big franchise like Mission Impossible, it really does need a Tom Cruise helming it that is going to draw people in who don't know anything about it and don't care anything about it. They're just like, oh, I'll go see it because it's a Tom Cruise movie. This one is really banking on people who, you had to buy into the trailer, buy into the idea of this kind of Cold War spy partnership, and just kind of say, okay, well, I'll invest some time into that. And then there's a small chunk of film audience who are Guy Ritchie fans who will probably go see anything with him, or that he does. But I just don't think that's a big audience. I don't think Henry Cavill has a big audience. Armie Hammer doesn't have a big audience.
Right.
None of these people carry the audience yet. It's all just kind of banking on, we're hoping that people have a fervent enough draw to spy movies right now.
Right, and part of that, I think also in my conspiracy theory mode, is that the studio was hedging their bet. They've been trying to get this reboot up apparently for like years and years and years and years. And their way of saying that this is a franchise we could have, but also no one knows who the Man from U.N.C.L.E. is, that they can't pay Tom Cruise salaries. Right. So they get two guys they can get who are both handsome and both cool and affordable. And let's give it a shot and give it to a hot director and like a super stylish director and see what can happen.
Well, it's interesting.
Maybe.
It's interesting to say that because apparently originally Soderbergh was attached to direct it.
Man, that would have been an interesting film.
He was originally attached to it. Apparently he left in 2011. Ironically also, okay, so this is funny that we hit this point of the conversation because in 2010, George Clooney was attached to this film at one point to play Napoleon Solo.
Oh, wow.
And there's actually a long list of leading male actors who were originally, including Tom Cruise, attached to take over this role, including like Fassbender, Bradley Cooper, and Ewan McGregor. So interestingly enough, I don't know if it's the way the Hollywood politics work out, if it's just, movie creation has momentum and loses momentum, that we arrived at the one that we arrived at. But I think it's interesting that is it less of a film because those people are not involved with it, or will it be less successful financially because those people are not involved.
Well, I think that's the thing that is potentially frustrating about it. I mean, here it is, we're on sort of day 2. It's not, it's not leading the box office.
That's about almost 13. It's an estimated 13 million opening weekend, so we'll see how it does.
I watch trailers, either iTunes or the websites that have just trailers, and I found it originally on there, the trailer for it. But when it was brought up earlier about not really seeing that much about it, I have to admit I don't think I've seen any advertisement or drive for it.
I actually read something that talked about kind of the pros and cons. This it was on boxoffice.com, looking at Man from U.N.C.L.E, what could affect its box office, the pros and cons. And they said, compared to especially Straight Outta Compton, that for this film, the social media activity was just almost non-existent. That like Rogue Nation, Kingsman, Spy, all those spy movies from this year all had huge, like, everybody was tweeting about it. This hardly has anybody attached to his Facebook page. It's not something that is people are talking about. Nobody is talking about this film. And I don't know if that's a fault of their advertising, like they didn't push it, or it's just something that they did push, but nobody latched onto it.
I mean, I read an article about the Straight Outta Compton did a on-purpose, very huge social media blitz advertisement, and as well as other advertisement. Apparently, the latest UFC fight had the movie being advertised right on the floor of the octagon. So, the Ronda Rousey fight. Sorry, the Ronda Rousey fight. Even though it's only 34 seconds, you got to see it. And so there was like a blitz of advertisement for that. For that movie.
Well, and don't forget that Dr. Dre is bang up popular in a number of different demographics right now. I mean,
yeah.
He's blowing up at Apple, and with the re-release, digital release of
Compton, the soundtrack.
Of Compton, the soundtrack, and of Chronic. I mean, that's he's all over the media right now. So.
And I think, because I always like to pretend that I know what's going on, it's the fact of like trying to restart this name recognizable thing. The Man from U.N.C.L.E, where there's periods between that is such an inscrutable, terrible title. That to keep calling it that, even, because that goes to what Andy is saying, is like banking on the idea of like name recognition. I don't think that many people really know what that is. Or at least people that will come into the theater. The Man from U.N.C.L.E is kind of the worst. That's like Steve the Bench. Like it's just putting words together. Like no one knows what that is. Like, yeah, the owl that stole a blanket. Like no one, it's just nonsense. So that's a terrible title to have any kind of traction.
Well, the one last thing about it is that, so if we're talking about them wanting to make a film in the same period or the same area from Mission Impossible, maybe they want to try to get in on the same thing, right? That movie is still showing in theaters right now, and so they're competing with that one, which I don't know which weekend it's in, but I'm looking at one of the numbers, and unfortunately Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, it looks like it may beat Man from U.N.C.L.E for this weekend. And then you also have other ones coming up. The other like properties of the time are also like the Avengers was a popular one that predated by like a couple of years. Well, you can't use that title. You can't reboot that one, right? So it's I don't know if the goal was to try to compete with Mission Impossible, but if it seems like a lot of the Hollywood mechanics of this seem to be a little bit off as well. The advertising, the placement, the time you release it, things like that.
Yeah, it almost feels like they're just, they're flushing it.
Yeah, so this is Warner Brothers. The Mission Impossible is Paramount, so it's almost like they're trying to have something in the same space, but they don't have as much firepower.
Do you think they are fleshing it? It's a weird time to flesh it, but if it costs that much, that's interesting.
It really, it just seems
No
crazy.
one knows.
No one knows.
Here.
It just seems insane that they've done zero push to get it out there and to educate the market. I mean, it's the fact that Rogue Nation is in week 4, and it is ahead of Man from U.N.C.L.E. In the same genre. That's bananas to me.
And that's always so disappointing. I'll never quite understand that kind of money understanding of like you spend that much money and then to throw it away when you have a good. I mean, the film is pretty good. It's worth not dumping at all. I mean, it's worth. It's maybe not a tentpole because its name is The Man from U.N.C.L.E, but
You're
it
saying
could
it may
be,
not play in
it could be a huge.
It may not play in the 24 to 40 female category very well. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not a 4-quadrant thing. I read that.
I can't wait to find out what the Swedish translated title for this movie.
Oh, me neither. That's brilliant.
It just seems a little unfortunate because it does seem it is enjoyable, but I don't know what they kind of set it up for a sequel, but so the question is all the other ones have modernized. So Mission Impossible was based on it, but it's a modern. This is stuck in the period. So do you sort of James Bond is from there. They're still doing films, but they're modern.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, when you look at it in $1964, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is doing really well.
It's killing it, right? but it's like, are they going to keep?
I bet that's how the studio's talking.
Like, are people still wanting stories told from that time period versus just?
Well, that's what they're banking on, right? I mean, they're banking on the nostalgia factor. I think probably a little more than that, but it was a delightful experience, and final comments as we move into our final thrilling segment. Andy,
I've got a few little things to say. I don't know if they're really final comments, but I was really glad that they didn't make this a spoof, kind of like they have been doing with a lot of TV reboots lately. I was glad that it was just kind of a straight up. I mean, I haven't seen the show, so I can't say if it was exactly what the show was, but it didn't feel like it was making fun of what the show was at all. It actually felt like a serious attempt at making a version of that show for us to enjoy. I really enjoyed that. I mean, not to say I don't enjoy like 21 Jump Street and stuff, but I this just worked really well for me the way that they did it.
Because in many respects, Austin Powers was already that spoof.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I didn't need to see another Starsky and Hutch ever again.
Total train wreck.
That was pretty awful. We haven't talked about the villains at all. I loved Elizabeth Debicki as the villain. I thought she just was fantastic. And almost more than her, Sylvester Groth as Uncle Rudy was just brilliant, particularly his bit when he's torturing them and then when they turn the tables on him, and just the way that he just instantly changes was perfect. And I really just loved all of that bit with Sylvester Groth in there.
Totally agree. That was hysterical. It was really a gruesome death to know was happening, even though they didn't show it.
Right. It was so bad.
It was so awful.
And I was laughing. I'm like, I can't believe I'm laughing at somebody like
who's electrocuting himself to the point of blowing up
Lighting
and
on fire,
burning himself to death. That was awful.
It was horrible thing to happen, but I couldn't stop laughing.
Because he was the worst. They really trucked him to be like the worst person on earth. And so that makes it okay. I actually thought that was interesting. He used that trick, I think 3 times, and it worked almost every time for me, of the idea of someone being kind of oblivious or at least indifferent while crazy stuff is happening in the background out of focus.
Mm-hmm.
That was like a continued...
Like when she's dancing.
When she's dancing during the boat chase, when Superman is eating the sandwich.
Adored that sequence.
Yeah, and then with the guy electrocuting himself because the short was fixed. I've never seen a film that did the exact same joke in a way 3 times in a row, and it actually worked. I thought that was actually pretty smart.
Well, they were throwing spaghetti at the wall because the other thing didn't work, the time travel bit. So Andy, what was you had a couple of points, yeah?
I think that was it. The fact that they didn't make it a spoof, and then the bad guys, I liked them quite a bit.
It's funny that you say that because I like the bad guys quite a bit. I find myself, I don't know, who was it who said it? Was it Tom? You're forgetting it as the minutes go by?
Yeah.
I had already sort of forgotten the bad guys.
Yeah.
How could you forget Freddie Mercury?
Right?
He was awesome.
I know.
He was forgettable.
That was this was the one thing that I wondered about this film, because I walked out and I said, I don't even know what the villains were doing. I know they had the nukes, and I'm assuming they were giving them to the Nazis to just continue what was going on in World War II. But it was similar to like criticisms of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, where it's this post-plot film where it's like, yeah, there's lots of cool action sequences, and yeah, there's MacGuffins, and there's not really a main conflict. It's just these things. And this was one where I felt like they had an opportunity to set it up, and if we're going to launch this as a franchise, we don't have like the big bad necessarily, unless it's going to be the Nazis resurgence or something. I'm not sure. But this one, other than they set the Countess or whatever up as like she's beauty and brains and ambition. She's she's really this bad person. I didn't really get a sense of why she was doing this. There was something with her father, but I felt like I was really paying attention to this film, but I didn't really get a sense of her ulterior motives, why she was doing this. She's at the end, she's threatening to basically destroy all of humanity, telling Solo, you and all your ancestors and relatives are going to be obliterated. Like, why? I just didn't have a sense of what the villains' motives were, other than that they were.
So I don't know if it came through. I don't remember them mentioning it. But in the TV series, the bad guy organization that Uncle was battling was Thrush, which is effectively your world domination organization, right? It's like a Smirsh in the James Bond stuff, but they didn't highlight it very well. So they brought the characters and the concepts from Uncle almost directly, like word for word, from the TV show to the movie, but they didn't. Basically the counter Uncle, the ant, I guess you could say it, was this Thrush.
Still funny.
Yeah, exactly. Is like this Thrush organization, and I guess if you were one of the people who were watched it, you would just fill in the gaps, but they didn't really address it, so you could basically say that this was an isolated villain, but with no motive, I guess.
Well, maybe they're doing a long play on the sort of parallel to Spectre. I mean, eventually we'll get to the movie Thrush.
Exactly.
Which would be a horrible mistake. Now that I say it out loud, that would be really a horrible, horrible thing.
I guess it just goes back to my issue of I'm not sure who this film was for. Because if it depends so much on people that were fans of the show that I'm assuming are intelligent adults, they have things that they dumb down, like these, let's hide a secret and reveal it. And like, our audience is smarter than that if you're going to this older audience. If you're going for a younger audience with the action and stuff, then I guess maybe you don't need to explain your villains as much then, I guess. So that's this whole post-plot thing of just, we go on a cool adventure and it's fun, and this film fell into that. And to me, it felt like it really was a film torn between two decades.
Yeah, I guess we'll see if that pays off. It did for me. Round the horn, final comments, and then we are going to rank it. Andy.
I liked it. I mean, I did have some pacing issues. It kind of fell in and out over the course of the film. But I loved the characters. I really connected with them. The style of the film I enjoyed. The production design. Everything about it I found very enjoyable. I think I like Steve, kind of am of the mind that, how quick am I going to end up forgetting this film? But that being said, it's a very easy watch, and it's something I could easily watch again.
Final comments, Mike.
I enjoyed it immensely. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and I think I would watch another movie in the same thing, and I definitely will watch another Henry Cavill vehicle.
Excellent. And Steve?
I'm still torn. I'm thinking about this of, going back to watch it again, and for some reason I'm thinking back to our a review of The Equalizer, which is again a reboot of a TV series. The enjoyment of the film didn't depend on that. It drew a lot of things from that. I don't know. I'm still, I guess I'm going to wait for a second viewing of this when it comes out on, digital, streaming or, whatever to revisit again and see what I think then. Because I agree. It is very enjoyable, but I'm concerned that it's forgettable and has flaws. And I don't know which one will win out at the end if I'm willing to just say, you know what, this is a lot of fun, or if these flaws are just going to really bother me on a second viewing.
Final comments, Tommy?
I would say that I thought Guy Ritchie, who is, as I said earlier, is hit or miss for me, showed a surprising amount of restraint for a lot of this. It seemed like he let style win over crazy camera moves for a lot of it, and I think he really triumphed for that. Liked the actors, didn't understand the story, and was fine with it. And I liked... Oh, one last thing. I also liked the two male leads weren't ever in a fight over the girl.
Oh, that's a good catch.
That there was someone, that there was one line for that. So it wasn't just sort of that old trope. I kind of like that. I appreciated that, not having to go through that nonsense.
Solo was never really interested.
Yeah.
Let me just add that one of the 14-year-olds who's sitting directly next to me, every time she got close to kissing Armie Hammer, and note, they never, I don't think, did.
They never do.
They never kiss. He actually took his T-shirt, and pulled it up over his head like a turtle.
To not watch them kiss?
To not watch the kid. And he would always do this.
Cooties.
And so he actually missed them not kissing every single time. I'm sure
do you guys remember that, being a teen, not wanting to see people kiss?
Bananas.
I remember not wanting to see my parents kiss, but just people kiss?
Dude, cooties are lethal,
That's
man.
so weird.
Cooties are lethal.
Fair enough.
I need a
Okay.
shirt.
So this kid's going to go home. How was the movie? Oh, there was so much kissing in this
There was
movie.
so much kissing, right? I really, I had a great time at this film. I feel like I've been trying, because of you guys, I've been trying to lower my expectations and try to have more fun. And I think I did really well at this film. I could have come in, and really, I probably could have been harder on it. But you guys are doing what you need to do for me, which is to help me just enjoy the time at these films. And I did that this time, and I feel really good about it. And let me just say, as a final comment,
That is a dubious compliment.
you're welcome. I could just swim in Henry Cavill's deep blue eyes. They had a couple of nice close-up eye shots.
Yeah.
Oh, he's dreamy.
Do you think the dimple in his chin is like a hot tub?
Don't even care, because I'm so lost in his eyes. Who cares?
Fair enough.
So, I think it's time for us to rank it. Let's see how this goes.
The men from U.N.C.L.E, they will never bungle and never ever crumble. Not a lot rhymes with uncle. Flick chart, not my best. Don't feel great about that one. All right. Go
Was
ahead.
it because just a second ago when I said before we rank it, I heard you say audibly,
Yeah.
and I thought, I wonder if he's actually written anything this time.
I saw this movie. I got to open this movie 45 minutes before we started. Sorry, go ahead. I love it. That's my best work.
It was
You're
the best.
welcome.
I can't wait. Head over to flickchart.com/TNR Film Board, and you can see our stack rankings of all of the films that we have done on this very special monthly show. And we'll see how Man from U.N.C.L.E. is going to hit. I don't know. You think it's going to be in the top half? I think it's going to be in the top half. We've done a lot of crappy movies.
Oh.
I think so. We have done a lot of crappy movies on the film board.
Oh.
Let's see. All right, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or Cloud Atlas?
Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Man from U.N.C.L.E. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or Looper?
Looper. Oh.
I haven't seen Looper in a while. People keep telling me I need to revisit it. And I'm trying to remember which one was more frustrating. Prosthetic forehead thing and
That's my problem. There were no prosthetic foreheads in U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah, and U.N.C.L.E. had lots of laughs that I Yeah. I just don't remember coming back from Looper saying I want to see it again to see how it holds up. I was like, I'm done with that. Whereas Uncle, I want to see again, so I'm going to say Uncle. Uncle! Uncle!
I'm going to cry Uncle.
I'm saying Uncle too.
Oh,
The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or Fury.
Fury.
Looper.
Favorite of all you guys.
Wait.
The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
I got confused. Man from
I'll
Uncle.
say the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Wow.
Fury.
Worst job I ever
Fury.
had.
Oh.
The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of
Edge
Tomorrow.
of
Edge of
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So great.
I will say I had a more enjoyable time in Man with Uncle.
The man
You're
with your
one
uncle.
of
The
us.
man with his uncle having a picnic in the
The
park.
Man with
Yeah,
my
your uncle's creeping me out.
I didn't even hear. How did that weigh out? Who won?
Edge of Tomorrow.
Okay.
The Man in Edge of Tomorrow. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or Kingsman: The Secret Service.
King-
Kingsman.
Oh, that's
Kingsman.
a fun. That's
That
a
is
fun
a nice
matchup.
little-
Absolutely,
Kingsman.
Kingsman.
Yep, Kingsman for sure.
That's kind of like
And,
one of the best matchups ever.
And that's it. It leaves it at number 5.
5.
Whoa!
Wow.
Yeah, it jumped right up there. It didn't let us rank it against Guardians of the Galaxy, which is actually just under Kingsman, but I would have picked Guardians.
I would have picked
I
Guardians.
Yeah. I should have known because
Okay.
we started our review of Ant-Man last month with this movie's disappointing. It ended up in the top 10. So I
right.
should have
Well,
known
we
this
we
was
don't
good.
have that many movies on the list, so the top
Yeah.
10 isn't that dubious of a.
With as many
Please
bombs
stop
as we've
saying
had,
Ant-Man.
this seems pretty good. It seems about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is
number
though
5
as,
out of 37.
as we're doing this ranking, Mike in the chat is pasting in headlines about this film. Mike,
Well, yeah. So early, blog or article reviews have been less than flattering, such as The Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie box office bigger bomb than expected.
Oh no!
I like the next one better.
Cry Uncle TV series reboot starring Superman and Lone Ranger, one of the year's biggest domestic bombs.
Oh my god, that's the meanest.
Which
So
also speaks to this not being
That was written by Pun
yeah,
Magoo.
which also speaks to this not being a Henry Cavill vehicle when they're using the characters from other movies to reference them.
Well, I think they're
You have a
referencing
good
2
point.
other disappointing films. Now, they can't say it's a bigger bomb than Fantastic
No,
Four.
well,
They can't say
so-
it's the biggest.
so if we talk about financials,
They say it's one of the
We talk
years.
about financials.
Yeah.
If this thing is aiming for a $13 million opening weekend release, that will be half of what
Yeah.
Fantastic Four pulled in.
In its opening
yes.
weekend?
Oh no!
Now,
But we also have to say, in terms of 8-day totals, the showdown on Box Office Mojo right now is between Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds and this current Fantastic Four.
yes.
And Fantastic Four is coming in at 36,361,000. Green Lantern, 76,955,000.
Well, and so I will say this.
Over
I
8
will say
days.
this
Thank
one
you.
thing though. If you want to talk about just financials, right? Fantastic Four got a lot more advertisement. A lot more.
That's true.
And if you have
Good point.
movies that are, like a lot of these summer superhero movies, people say that they're not, works of art, they're not whatever, but people come out and see them, right? And a lot of that is because they know about it. You sort of have to know about it to go to the movie theater to purchase the ticket for it. So
One would
I
think.
think from a Hollywood mechanism to get this thing out, it seems like they've not been as energetic as you would think.
I wish they had more faith in it because we had a really good time at this film, and now after we've talked about it, I actually am hoping for a sequel, just to prove everybody else wrong. Where do we go from here? We already have it picked for next month, right?
That is correct. We are going to be talking about Everest for September.
And we get to revisit one of our actresses from Man from U.N.C.L.E. in that film.
I wonder what accent she will have.
So we'll have an interesting discussion about her performances. This will be an interesting little twist.
Yes, we will. Very much looking forward to this film. Thank you so much, gents, for gathering. Mike Evans.
I was never here.
Duh.
So
I don't like it. I think he might be behind me right now.
Steve Sarmento.
I think I'm going to have to go have some Johnny Walker Black Label to get the taste of this film out of my mouth.
Oh, Tommy.
We did it! Thank you guys. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Andy Nelson. I'll talk to you on Thursday.
Sounds good, man.
Good night, everybody.
Ding 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 ding.